This is Book 6 of John Dryden's translation of the Aeneid. At the beginning of the book, the Trojans are going to land at Cumae, and Aeneas is going to hear the Sibyl's prophecy. The Trojans will then hold a funeral for a crew member, and Aeneas will collect the needed golden bough to get into the underworld. Aeneas and the Sibyl will then enter the underworld and cross the river Acheron with the boatman Charon. And then Aeneas and the Sibyl will make their way through the underworld. So first, Aeneas will encounter the spirits of the recently deceased who are awaiting judgment. He'll then go to the fields of mourning, inhabited by those who died for love. He'll then visit the field of war heroes, and finally get a glimpse of Tartarus, the place of utmost suffering, before he and the Sibyl enter Elysium and meet Anchises' ghost. In Elysium, Anchises will show Aeneas a parade of heroes, members of Aeneas' progeny or line of descendants. And finally, in a very short section at the end, Anchises will encourage Aeneas, and Aeneas and the Sibyl will leave the underworld. As a note, this book is absolutely filled with allusions to Greco-Roman myth and history, so we will come across a lot of proper names. Book 6 of the Aeneid by Virgil, translated by John Dryden. This book actually starts right exactly where Book 5 left off, so I'm going to read the last 2 lines of Book 5 and then go right into Book 6. For faith reposed on seas and on the flattering sky, thy naked corpse is doomed on shores unknown to lie. He said, and wept, then spread his sails before the winds, and reached at length the Cumaean shore. Their anchors dropped, his crew the vessels moor. They turn their heads to sea, their sterns to land, and greet with greedy joy the Italian strand. Some strike with clashing flints their fiery seed, some gather sticks the kindled flames to feed, or search for hollow trees and fell the woods, or trace through valleys the discovered floods. As a note, Dryden is using floods to mean streams, almost always in this translation, if you haven't picked that up. Thus, while their several charges they fulfill, the pious prince ascends the sacred hill where Phoebus is adored, and seeks the shade which hides from sight his venerable maid. Deep in a cave the Sibyl makes abode. Thence full of fate returns, and of the god. Through Trivia's grove they walk, and now behold, and enter now, the temple roofed with gold. When Daedalus to fly the Cretan shore his heavy limbs unjointed pinions bore, the first who sailed in air, 'tis sung by fame, to the Cumaean coast at length he came, and here alighting built this costly frame. Inscribed to Phoebus, here he hung on high the steerage of his wings that cut the sky. Then o'er the lofty gate his art embossed androgynous death, and offerings to his ghost. 7 youths from Athens yearly sent, to meet the fate appointed by revengeful Crete. And next to those the dreadful urn was placed, in which the destined names by lots were cast. The mournful parents stand around in tears, and rising Crete against their shore appears. There, too, in living sculpture, might be seen the mad affection of the Cretan queen. Then how she cheats her bellowing lover's eye, the rushing leap, the doubtful progeny. The lower part a beast, a man above, the monuments of their polluted love. Not far from thence he graved the wondrous maze, 1,000 doors, 1,000 winding ways. Here dwells the monster, hid from human view, not to be found but by the faithful clue, till the kind artist, moved with pious grief, lent to the loving maid this last relief, and all those erring paths described so well, that Theseus conquered, and the monster fell. Here hapless Icarus had found his part, had not the father's grief restrained his art. He twice essayed to cast his son in gold, twice from his hands he dropped the forming mold. All this with wondering eyes Aeneas viewed, each varying object his delight renewed. Eager to read the rest, Achates came, and by his side the mad divining dame, the priestess of the god, Deiphebe her name. Time suffers not, she said, to feed your eyes with empty pleasures. Haste the sacrifice. 7 bullocks, yet unyoked, for Phoebus choose, and for Diana 7 unspotted ewes. This said, the servant urges the sacred rites, while to the temple she the prince invites. A spacious cave within its farmost part was hewed and fashioned by laborious art through the hill's hollow sides. Before the place 100 doors, 100 entries grace. As many voices issue, and the sound of Sibyl's words as many times rebound.
Now to the mouth they come. Aloud she cries, "This is the time, inquire your destinies. He comes, beholds the god." Thus while she said, and shivering at the sacred entry stayed, her color changed, her face was not the same, and hollow groans from her deep spirit came.
Okay, so the book starts with Aeneas mourning the death of his pilot Palinurus, and they come to the Chimaean coast, and they quickly get everything ready, they get the fires going, and Aeneas makes his way to the temple to question the Sibyl. And lo and behold, the temple was built by Daedalus, this creator, this master craftsman who made the labyrinth and made the wings that he and Icarus flew on. And when he came here, he built a temple, and he decorated this temple to Apollo with this beautiful art. So Aeneas spends a lot of time looking at this art that depicts the myth of the Minotaur. So it starts, if you know the myth, with Androgeus, the son of Minos, dying, and Minos requiring 7 youths from Athens to come to Crete as a sacrifice. And how Poseidon, or for the Romans, Neptune, cursed the queen of Crete to fall in love with the bull, and how she ends up having the Minotaur as a result. And it goes through all of these parts of the myth, how Theseus comes and kills the Minotaur, how Daedalus and Icarus escape with their wings, and then we get this note that 2 times Daedalus, you can tell, tried to put his son into this artwork, and he just couldn't. He fell into grief when he did. So Aeneas is looking at this delighted, and then Achates comes, and the Sibyl Deiphobe, she shows up and says, "Hey, there's no time to waste. Make your sacrifices to Apollo and Diana," which would be Artemis, Apollo's twin sister, and kind of let's get the show on the road. And so they do. We go inside this cave. It's very impressive as well. And then she says, "The god Apollo is coming on and empowering me," and she starts kind of looking strange, and these hollow groans come from deep within her. So let's continue. Line 74. Her hair stood up. Convulsive rage possessed her trembling limbs and heaved her laboring breast. Greater than humankind she seemed to look, and with an accent more than mortal spoke. Her staring eyes with sparkling fury roll, when all the god came rushing on her soul. Swiftly she turned, and foaming as she spoke, "Why this delay?" she cried. "The powers invoke. Thy prayers alone can open this abode, else vain are my demands, and dumb the god." She said no more. The trembling Trojans here o'erspread with a damp sweat and holy fear. The prince himself with awful dread possessed, his vows to great Apollo thus addressed: "Indulgent god, propitious power to Troy, swift to relieve, unwilling to destroy, directed by whose hand the Dardan dart pierced the proud Grecians' only mortal part. Thus far, by fate's decrees and thy commands, through ambient seas and through devouring sands, our exiled crew has sought the Ausonian ground, and now at length the flying coast is found. Thus far the fate of Troy from place to place with fury has pursued her wandering race. Here cease, ye powers, and let your vengeance end. Troy is no more, and can no more offend. And thou, O sacred maid, inspired to see the event of things in dark futurity, give me what heaven has promised to my fate, to conquer and command the Latian state, to fix my wandering gods, and find a place for the long exiles of the Trojan race. Then shall my grateful hands a temple rear to the twin gods, with vows and solemn prayer, and annual rites and festivals and games shall be performed to their auspicious names. Nor shalt thou want thy honors in my land, for there thy faithful oracle shall stand, preserved in shrines, and every sacred lay which by thy mouth Apollo shall convey. All shall be treasured by a chosen train of holy priests, and ever shall remain. But oh, commit not thy prophetic mind to flitting leaves, the sport of every wind, lest they disperse in air our empty fate. Write not, but what the powers ordain, relate." Struggling in vain, impatient of her load, and laboring underneath the ponderous god, the more she strove to shake him from her breast,
with more and far superior force he pressed, commands his entrance, and without control usurps her organs and inspires her soul. Now with a furious blast the 100 doors ope of themselves, a rushing whirlwind roars within the cave, and Sybil's voice restores. Escape the dangers of the watery rain, yet more and greater ills by land remain. The coast so long desired, nor doubt the event, thy troops shall reach, but having reached, repent. Wars, horrid wars I view, a field of blood, and Tiber rolling with the purple flood. Simois nor Xanthus shall be wanting there, a new Achilles shall in arms appear, and he too goddess born. Fierce Juno's hate added to hostile force shall urge thy fate. To what strange nation shalt not thou resort, driven to solicit aid at every court? The cause the same which Ilium once oppressed, a foreign mistress and a foreign guest. But thou, secure of soul, unbent with woes, the more thy fortune frowns, the more oppose. The dawnings of thy safety shall be shown from whence thou least shalt hope, a Grecian town. Thus from the dark recess the Sibyl spoke, and the resisting air the thunder broke. The cave rebellowed, and the temple shook. The ambiguous god who ruled her laboring breast in these mysterious words his mind expressed. Some truths revealed, in terms involved the rest. Okay, so the prophetess speaks by Apollo, and she looks certainly otherworldly, and she says in this weird voice, "Why do you delay? Invoke the powers, or Apollo won't say a thing." And so Aeneas is trembling, but he invokes Apollo to speak, the one who guided Paris's arrow into the proud Grecian's only mortal part, Achilles' heel, and who has guided them thus far in the journey, but they've had so much hardship by land and sea ever since they left Troy. And he's asking, line 98, cease, cease, Troy is no more. Please stop with the hardship and bless our trip to the Latian state, line 103. And if you do this, then we will honor you with games and festivals for both you and your twin sister, Artemis. And at the end of his invocation, he addresses the Sibyl and says, please, just like he was recommended by the other prophet of Apollo, his friend Helenus, please do not write your prophecy on leaves, but rather tell us with your mouth. And so she is trying to keep control, but Apollo remains in control of the Sibyl. And so she says what she sees. She sees a field of blood, all of this war. A new Achilles will arise in their destined home. So fierce Juno's hatred will drive them to solicit help from anybody they can when they get to their destined home. And it'll be the same issue causing all of this hostility as the last time. A woman taken by a foreigner, just like Paris took Helen. So something like that will happen to cause all this strife. But fear not, because ironically, your help will come from a Grecian town when you're there. And so thunder reverberates through the cave at the end, and Aeneas gets half of what Apollo was referring to and really didn't get the other half. And so we'll continue. 153. At length her fury fell, her foaming ceased, and ebbing in her soul that God decreased. Then thus the chief, no terror to my view, no frightful face of danger can be new. Inured to suffer and resolved to dare, the fates without my power shall be without my care. This let me crave, since near your grove the road to hell lies open, in the dark abode which Acheron surrounds, the innavigable flood. Conduct me through the regions void of light, and lead me longing to my Father's sight. For him 1,000 dangers I have sought, and rushing where the thickest Grecians fought, safe on my back the sacred burthen brought. He for my sake the raging ocean tried, and wrath of heaven my still auspicious guide, and bore beyond the strength decrepit age supplied. Oft since he breathed his last, in dead of night his reverend image stood before my sight, enjoined to seek below his holy shade, conducted there by your unerring aid. But you, if pious minds by prayers are won, oblige the Father, and protect the Son. Yours is the power. nor Proserpina in vain has made you priestess of her nightly reign. If Orpheus, armed with an enchanting lyre, the ruthless king with pity could inspire, and from the shades below redeem his wife, if Pollux, offering his alternate life, could free his brother, and can daily go by turns aloft, by turns descend below, why name I Theseus or his greater friend, who trod the downward path and upward could ascend? Not less than theirs from Jove my lineage came, my mother greater, my descent the same. So prayed the Trojan prince, and while he prayed, his hand upon the holy altar laid. Then thus replied the prophetess divine: O goddess born of great Anchises' line, the gates of hell are open night and day, smooth the descent and easy is the way. But to return and view the cheerful skies, in this the task and mighty labor lies. To few great Jupiter imparts this grace, and those of shining worth and heavenly race. Betwixt those regions and our upper light, deep forest and impenetrable night possess the middle space. The infernal bounds Cocytus with his sable waves surrounds. But if so dire a love your soul invades, as twice below to view the trembling shades, if you so hard a toil will undertake, as twice to pass the navigable lake, receive my counsel. In the neighboring grove there stands a tree, the queen of Stygian Jove claims it her own. Thick woods and gloomy night conceal the happy plant from human sight. One bough it bears, but wondrous to behold, the ductile rind and leaves of radiant gold. This from the vulgar branches must be torn, and to fair Proserpina, the present born, ere leave be given to tempt the nether skies. The first thus rent, a second will arise, and the same metal the same room supplies. Look round the wood with lifted eyes to see the lurking gold upon the fatal tree, then rend it off, as holy rites command. The willing metal will obey thy hand. Following with ease, if favored by thy fate, thou art foredoomed to view the Stygian state. If not, no labor can the tree constrain, and strength of stubborn arms and steel are vain. Besides, you know not, while you here attend, the unworthy fate of your unhappy friend. Breathless he lies, and his unburied ghost, deprived of funeral rites, pollutes your host. Pay first his pious dues, and for the dead 2 sable sheep around his hearse be led. Then living turfs upon his body lay. This done, securely take the destined way to find the regions destitute of day. She said, and held her peace. Aeneas went sad from the cave, and full of discontent, unknowing whom the sacred Sibyl meant. So this section starts with Aeneas saying, I'm not afraid of whatever dangers this represents. I've seen it all, but I do have a request. I want to go to Acheron, this river in Hades, the one that surrounds Hades, and that the souls must cross over on the ferry boat. And I want to be taken by you. You take me, and I bore my father on my back through so many evils, and he stuck by my side. And now, in the dead of night, his ghost visits me, and joining me, directing me to seek him in the underworld. And so, you're the one that can make this happen. And it's been done before. It was done by several. It's been done by Orpheus and his enchanting lyre. Orpheus would be the son of one of the muses. It's been done by Pollux, who negotiated with Jove to have his brother Castor get half of his immortality. It was done by Theseus and his greater friend Hercules, line 184. And all of these are descended from Jove in some way or another, and so am I. As a Trojan, as a noble Trojan, I am descended from Jove, and my mother is Aphrodite. Why should I not be able to do this? And so 190 starts, the prophet is divine. Oh, you want to go to the underworld? Well, getting to the underworld is not the hard part. That's easy. Smooth the descent and easy is the way. To return, that's the trick. Very few people does Jupiter allow to do that. And she mentions Cocytus, this river of wailing in the underworld, and the queen of Stygian Jove. Stygian Jove would be Hades or Pluto, and so the queen would be Proserpina, Persephone, if you're familiar with the Greek version. And so what you need to do, you want to go there. There is this tree claimed by Proserpina to be her own. And on that tree is this ductile rind that has leaves of radiant gold. In other words, this flexible branch that has leaves of gold. What you need to do is present that to Proserpina. And if you are fated to go to the underworld and return, that will be confirmed by two things. Number one, another one will grow back in its place. And also, it'll come off really easily for you. If you're doing everything you can to get it off and it won't come off, then no labor can the tree constrain. Line 223. Nothing's going to work against it. So that's how you'll know. But before you go, make sure you bury your friend. Oh, Aeneas says, what friend are you talking about? And so he's a little worried because he doesn't know he has a friend to bury. So we'll pick up on 237. Aeneid, the companion of his breast, goes grieving by his side with equal cares oppressed. Walking, they talked and fruitlessly divined what friend the priestess by those words designed. But soon they found an object to deplore. Maecenas lay extended on the shore. Son of the god of winds, none so renowned the warrior trumpet in the field to sound, with breathing brass to kindle fierce alarms and rouse to dare their fate in honorable arms. He served great Hector, and was ever near, not with his trumpet only, but his spear. But by Pelides' arms, when Hector fell, he chose Aeneas, and he chose as well. Swollen with applause and aiming still at more, he now provokes the sea gods from the shore. With envy Triton heard the martial sound, and the bold champion for his challenge drowned. Then cast his mangled carcass on the strand. The gazing crowd around the body stand. All weep, but most Aeneas mourns his fate, and hastens to perform the funeral state. In altar-wise a stately pile they rear, the basis broad below, and top advanced in air. An ancient wood, fit for the work designed, that shady covert of the savage kind, the Trojans found. The sounding axe is plied, firs, pines, and pitch trees, and the towering pride of forest ashes feel the fatal stroke, and piercing wedges cleave the stubborn oak. Huge trunks of trees, felled from the steepy crown of the bare mountains, roll with ruin down. Armed like the rest, the Trojan prince appears, and by his pious labor urges theirs. Thus while he wrought, revolving in his mind the ways to compass what his wish designed, he cast his eyes upon the gloomy grove, and then with vows implored the Queen of Love. O may thy power, propitious still to me, conduct my steps to find the fatal tree in this deep forest, since the Sibyl's breath foretold, alas, too true, Maecenas' death. Scarce had he said, when full before his sight 2 doves, descending from their airy flight, secure upon the grassy plain alight. He knew his mother's birds, and thus he prayed, Be you my guides with your auspicious aid, and lead my footsteps till the branch be found, whose glittering shadow gilds the sacred ground. And thou, great parent, with celestial care, in this distress be present to my prayer. Thus having said, he stopped with watchful sight, observing still the motions of their flight, what course they took, what happy signs they shew. They fed, and fluttering by degrees withdrew still farther from the place, but still in view. Hopping and flying, thus they led him on to the slow lake, whose baleful stench to shun they winged their flight aloft. Then, stooping low, perched on the double tree that bears the golden bough, through the green leaves the glittering shadows glow. As on the sacred oak, the wintry mistletoe, where the proud mother views her precious brood and happier branches which she never sowed. Such was the glittering, such the ruddy rind, and dancing leaves that wantoned in the wind. He seized the shining bough with gripping hold, and rent away with ease the lingering gold. Then to the Sibyl's palace bore the prize. Meantime the Trojan troops with weeping eyes to dead Maecenas pay his obsequies. All right, so Aeneid and Aeneas leave the Sibyl, and they are grieved because they think someone's going to be dead whenever they get to the rest of the Trojans. And lo and behold, it's Maecenas. Maecenas, who is the son of Iolaus, and he is formerly Hector's trumpeter, and now he was Aeneas's, and they were great friends. But Maecenas displays his hubris as he provokes the sea gods from the shore, saying that he is greater than even them. Well, Triton, the son of Poseidon, hears Maecenas say this, and so he quickly drowns him and casts his mangled carcass on the shore. And so everyone sees him. They are horrified and they start chopping down trees to make his funeral pyre. And Aeneas joins and sets an example by his labor when he prays to his mother. Well, the Sibyl was right about that, and so I'm sure she is right about the golden bough. Please lead me to it. And after he's done praying to Venus, lo and behold, 2 doves, the birds of Venus, come and land in front of him. And so he says, "Be my guides," and he starts following them as he watches where they're flying. And they fly further and further into these woods, and they get to this slow river that has this ominous stench to it. Smells like death, like Proserpina, right? And there it is. There's this branch. And so he goes up and he puts his hand on the golden bough, and it comes off easily, just like she said it would if he was destined to go to the underworld and return. And so he quickly takes the golden bough to the Sibyl, and the rest of the Trojans still pay their obsequies, their funeral rites to Maecenas. Line 308. First from the ground a lofty pile they rear, of pitch trees, oaks, and pines, and unctuous fir. The fabric's front with cypress twigs they strew, and stick the sides with boughs of baleful yew. The topmost part his glittering arms adorn. Warm waters then in brazen cauldrons borne are poured to wash his body joint by joint, and fragrant oils the stiffened limbs anoint. With groans and cries Maecenas they deplore. Then on a bier, with purple covered o'er the breathless body, thus bewailed they lay, and fire the pile, their faces turned away. Such reverend rites their fathers used to pay. Pure oil and incense on the fire they throw, and fat of victims which his friends bestow. These gifts the greedy flames to dust devour. Then on the living coals red wine they pour, and last the relics by themselves dispose, which in a brazen urn the priests enclose. Old Coroneus compassed thrice the crew, and dipped an olive branch in holy dew, which thrice he sprinkled round, and thrice aloud invoked the dead, and then dismissed the crowd. But good Aeneas ordered on the shore a stately tomb, whose top a trumpet bore, a soldier's falchion, and a seaman's oar. Thus was his friend interred, and deathless fame still to the lofty cape consigns his name. These rites performed, the prince, without delay, hastes to the netherworld his destined way. Deep was the cave, and downward as it went from the wide mouth, a rocky rough descent. And here the access a gloomy grove defends, and there the innavigable lake extends, o'er whose unhappy waters, void of light, no bird presumes to steer his airy flight. Such deadly stenches from the depths arise, and steaming sulphur that infects the skies. From hence the Grecian bards their legends make, and give the name of Avernus to the lake. 4 sable bullocks, and the yoke untaught, for sacrifice the pious hero brought. The priestess pours the wine betwixt their horns, then cuts the curling hair, that first oblation burns, invoking Hecate hither to repair, a powerful name in hell and upper air. The sacred priests with ready knives bereave the beasts of life, and in full bowls receive the streaming blood. A lamb to hell and night, the sable wool without a streak of white, Aeneas offers, and by fate's decree, a barren heifer, Proserpina, to thee. With holocaust he Pluto's altar fills, 7 brawny bulls with his own hand he kills. Then on the broiling entrails oil he pours, which ointed thus the raging flame devours. Late the nocturnal sacrifice begun, nor ended till the next returning sun. Then earth began to bellow, trees to dance, and howling dogs in glimmering light advance, ere Hecate came. Far hence be souls profane, the Sibyl cried, and from the grove abstain. Now, Trojan, take the way thy fate affords, assume thy courage and unsheath thy sword, she said, and passed along the gloomy space. The prince pursued her steps with equal pace. Ye realms, yet unrevealed to human sight, ye gods who rule the regions of the night, ye gliding ghosts, permit me to relate the mystic wonders of your silent state. So, the Trojans build a pyre for Maecenas, and they are doing all the funeral rites. They're wailing, they are offering things into the fire, and Coroneus is going around the Trojans with an olive branch, and so there's all these rites going on, right? And Aeneas returns from the Sibyl, and he makes sure to make this impressive tomb on the seashore and name the bay after Maecenas. And so after all of this has happened, he's done right by his friend. He quickly goes to the Sibyl and he makes out for the underworld, for Avernus, the entrance to hell. And so he offers all of these animals, he prepares offerings to Hecate and to Hell and Night and Proserpina and Pluto. And holocausts here means sacrifices consumed by fire. And so all of these are going to the underworld gods and goddesses, and he's pouring ointment on them, line 363. And then the earth begins to bellow, and Hecate comes, and the Sibyl says, all mortal beings go away if you're here, so probably talking to the priests. And now, Trojan Aeneas, take courage, unsheath your sword, we're going down to the underworld. And so, Virgil gives this aside. Ye realms, ye gods, ye gliding ghosts, permit me to tell everyone what the underworld is like. And so now he does. Line 378. Obscure they went through dreary shades that led along the waste dominions of the dead. Thus wander travelers in woods by night, by the moon's doubtful and malignant light, when Jove in dusky clouds involves the skies, and the faint crescent shoots by fits before their eyes. Just in the gate and in the jaws of hell, where vengeful cares and sullen sorrows dwell, and pale diseases and repining age, want, fear, and famine's unresisted rage. Here toils and death's half-brother sleep, forms terrible to view their sentry keep. With anxious pleasures of a guilty mind, deep frauds before and open force behind, the Furies' iron beds, and strife that shakes her hissing tresses and unfolds her snakes. Full in the midst of this infernal road, an elm displays her dusky arms abroad. The god of sleep there hides his heavy head, and empty dreams on every leaf are spread. Of various forms, unnumbered spectres more, centaurs in double shapes besiege the door. Before the passage horrid Hydra stands, and Briareus with all his 100 hands. Gorgons, Geryon with his triple frame, and vain Chimera vomits empty flame. The chief unsheathed his shining steel, prepared, though seized with sudden fear, to force the guard, offering his brandished weapon at their face. Had not the Sibyl stopped his eager pace, and told him what those empty phantoms were, forms without bodies, and impassive air. Hence to deep Acheron they take their way, whose troubled eddies, thick with ooze and clay, are whirled aloft, and in Cocytus lost. There Charon stands, who rules the dreary coast, a sordid god. Down from his hoary chin a length of beard descends, uncombed, unclean. His eyes, like hollow furnaces on fire, a girdle foul with grease, binds his obscene attire. He spreads his canvas, with his pole he steers, the freights of flitting ghosts in his thin bottom bears. He looked in years, yet in his ears were seen a youthful vigor and autumnal green. An airy crowd came rushing where he stood, which filled the margin of the fatal flood. Husbands and wives, boys and unmarried maids, and mighty heroes' more majestic shades, and youths entombed before their fathers' eyes, with hollow groans and shrieks and feeble cries. Thick as the leaves in autumn strow the woods, or fowls by winter force forsake the floods, and wing their hasty flight to happier lands. Such and so thick the shivering army stands, and pressed for passage with extended hands. Now these, now those, the surly boatman bore. The rest he drove to distance from the shore. The hero, who beheld with wondering eyes the tumult mixed with shrieks, laments, and cries, asked of his guide what the rude concourse meant. Why to the shore the thronging people bent? What forms of law among the ghosts were used? Why some were ferried o'er, and some refused? Son of Anchises, offspring of the gods, the Sibyl said, you see the Stygian floods, the sacred stream which heaven's imperial state attests in oaths, and fears to violate. The ghosts rejected are the unhappy crew, deprived of sepulchres and funeral due. The boatman Charon, those, the buried host, he ferries over to the farther coast. Nor dares his transport vessel cross the waves with such whose bones are not composed in graves. 100 years they wander on the shore. At length their penance done, are wafted o'er. The Trojan chief his forward pace repressed, revolving anxious thoughts within his breast. He saw his friends, who whelmed beneath the waves, their funeral honors claimed, and asked their quiet graves. The lost Leucaspis in the crowd he knew, and the brave leader of the Lycian crew, whom on the Tyrrhene seas the tempests met. The sailors mastered, and the ship o'erset. Alrighty, so welcome to the underworld. As Aeneas and the Sibyl make their way down in this creepy descent, they see all of these forms, cares and sorrows, diseases, age, fear, death, sleep, all of these things that are personified here and that are associated with death or the underworld in some way or another, the Furies, strife. And there's creatures as well, centaurs, the Hydra, Briareus, who has 100 hands on his body, Gorgons like Medusa, and so on. And so Aeneas draws his sword, and he's ready to threaten these guards to let him through at the edge of a sword. And then the Sibyl says, hey, these are just figments of these things. They're not the real things. And so they go down and they see Acheron, the river of the underworlds that Charon has to ferry people across. And then it goes to Cocytus, like we mentioned before, which is the river of wailing. And so there is Charon, who has this long white beard, and he looks like death, and he ferries people, some of them, across the river, and others he doesn't. And all of these people are pressing against the boat, trying to get across. They're as thick as leaves in a forest, as birds in flight, and Aeneas wonders why. Why is Charon not letting some of them across? And so the Sibyl says, what you see is the river Styx, the Stygian flood that the gods swear on, the river Styx, when they want to make the most sacred promise they can. And Charon is letting the ones across who have had a proper burial. And the ones that are not getting across have not had a proper burial and funeral. And they have to wait 100 years before they get to go across. And Aeneas, to his horror, sees some people he knows that haven't been given a proper funeral. One, Leucaspis, who died in a war with Hercules, and then he sees someone else he recognizes, which we'll find out is by name Palinurus, his pilot who is lost at sea because of sleep. Line 461. Amidst the spirits Palinurus pressed, yet fresh with life, a new admitted guest, who while he steering viewed the stars, and bore his course from Afric to the Latian shore, fell headlong down. The Trojan fixed his view, and scarcely through the gloom the sullen shadow knew. Then thus the prince, what envious power, O friend, brought your loved life to this disastrous end? For Phoebus, ever true in all he said, has in your fate alone my faith betrayed. The god foretold you should not die before you reach secure from seas the Italian shore. Is this the unerring power? The ghost replied, nor Phoebus flattered, nor his answers lied, nor envious gods have sent me to the deep. But while the stars in course of heaven I keep, my wearied eyes were seized with fatal sleep. I fell, and with my weight the helm constrained was drawn along, which yet my grip retained. Now by the winds and raging waves I swear, your safety more than mine was then my care. Lest of the guide bereft, the rudder lost, your ship should run against the rocky coast. 3 blustering nights, borne by the southern blast, I floated, and discovered land at last. High on a mounting wave my head I bore, forcing my strength and gathering to the shore, panting, but past the danger, now I seized the craggy cliffs, and my tired members eased. While cumbered with my dropping clothes I lay, the cruel nation, covetous of prey, stained with my blood the unhospitable coast. And now by winds and waves my lifeless limbs are tossed, which, oh, avert by yon ethereal light which I have lost for this eternal night. Or if by dearer ties you may be won, by your dead sire and by your living son, redeem from this reproach my wandering ghost, or with your navy seek the Velin coast, and in a peaceful grave my corpse compose, or if a nearer way your mother shows, without whose aid you durst not undertake this frightful passage o'er the Stygian lake, lend to this wretch your hand, and waft him o'er to the sweet banks of yon forbidden shore. Scarce had he said, the prophetess began, What hopes delude thee, miserable man? Think'st thou thus unentombed to cross the floods, to view the furies and infernal gods, and visit without leave the dark abodes? Attend the term of long revolving years. Fate and the dooming gods are deaf to tears. This comfort of thy dire misfortune take. The wrath of heaven, inflicted for thy sake, with vengeance shall pursue the inhuman coast, till they propitiate thy offended ghost, and raise a tomb with vows and solemn prayer, and Palinurus' name the place shall bear. This calmed his cares, soothed with his future fame, and pleased to hear his propagated name. So it's Palinurus, and Aeneas wants to know what happened, why Phoebus Apollo lied to him, and he didn't make it to Italy. And they said, Phoebus never promised that I would get to Italy, and it wasn't him, it wasn't any of the gods, but it was sleep. I fell into the ocean because I fell asleep, and then I was only concerned for your care because you were without a pilot, and I didn't know what would happen to your ship. And so for 3 nights I was borne on the sea, I floated, and then I finally landed and rested on a foreign coast, only for the inhabitants there, the cruel nation, to kill me on the coast and leave my body there in the waves, and that is where my body is still. So now here I am, a wandering ghost, unless you go and rescue my corpse. However long it takes, I hope it doesn't take too long, and maybe your mother will show you a quicker way to do so. But while you're here, maybe you could just take me across the river yourself, since Charon won't. And the Sibyl is quick to reply, What are you thinking, you miserable man? You cannot, nor can anybody else, get across the Styx without being ferried over, and it will never happen until you are buried properly. But take comfort in this, line 513. The gods will make sure that someone goes to that awful, inhumane place, and they will make sure you are given a proper burial and funeral, and the name of that place will forever be Palinurus. And so Palinurus is comforted by this, that he will be buried, he won't have to stay here for 100 years, and he is also happy that his name will live on in this place. Continuing, line 521. Now nearer to the Stygian lake they draw, whom from the shore the surly boatman saw, observed their passage through the shady wood, and marked their near approaches to the flood. Then thus he called aloud, and flamed with wrath. Mortal whate'er, who this forbidden path in arms presumes to tread, I charge thee stand, and tell thy name and business in the land. Know this, the realm of night, the Stygian shore, my boat conveys no living bodies o'er. Nor was I pleased great Theseus once to bear, who forced a passage with his pointed spear, nor strong Alcides, men of mighty fame, and from the immortal gods their lineage came. In fetters one the barking porter tied, and took him trembling from his sovereign's side. Two sought by force to seize his beauteous bride. To whom the Sibyl thus, Compose thy mind, nor frauds are here contrived, nor force designed. Still may the dog the wandering troops constrain of airy ghosts, and vex the guilty train, and with her grisly lord his lovely queen remain. The Trojan chief, whose lineage is from Jove, much famed for arms and more for filial love, is sent to seek his sire in your Elysian grove. If neither piety nor heaven's command can gain his passage to the Stygian stand, this fatal present shall prevail at least. Then shewed the shining bough concealed within her vest. No more was needful, for the gloomy god stood mute with awe to see the golden rod, admired the destined offering to his queen, a venerable gift so rarely seen. His fury thus appeased, he puts to land. The ghosts forsake their seats at his command. He clears the deck, receives the mighty freight. The leaky vessel groans beneath the weight. Slowly she sails, and scarcely stems the tides. The pressing water pours within her sides. Her passengers at length are wafted o'er, exposed in muddy weeds upon the miry shore. No sooner landed, in his den they found the triple porter of the Stygian sound, grim Cerberus, who soon began to rear his crested snakes and armed his bristling hair. The prudent Sibyl had before prepared a sop, in honey steeped, to charm the guard, which mixed with powerful drugs she cast before his greedy grinning jaws, just oped to roar. With 3 enormous mouths he gapes, and straight with hunger pressed devours the pleasing bait. Long draughts of sleep his monstrous limbs enslave. He reels, and falling fills the spacious cave. The keeper charmed, the chief without delay passed on, and took the irremeable way. All right. So they're in the underworlds. Palinurus has been appeased, and now they approach Charon. And Charon's not happy to see a mortal here. He's seen a few before. Theseus got across, Alcides, which would be Hercules, got across, and Hercules is the one who brought Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, out of the underworld. Charon was not happy about that. There's been a couple people who have tried to take Proserpina away from Pluto, and none of these have been good. And so the Sibyl says, hey, nobody's going to do any of those things. We seek this man's father in the Elysian Grove, in Elysium. And if nothing can persuade you, piety can't, heaven's command can't, maybe this will. And so she shows him the golden bough that Aeneas got from the tree of Proserpina. And Charon is immediately gratified. He looks in wonder at it because he doesn't see it very often, if at all. And so he quickly gets all of the other souls out of the boat, and then he transports the Sibyl and Aeneas across. Well, they get there, and immediately they meet Cerberus, the 3-headed dog who has serpents for a tail, and the dog's not happy to see mortals either, and the prudent Sibyl immediately gets out a sop, a piece of bread that's been soaked in honey and powerful drugs that induce sleep. And so the dog, who never gets food, greedily eats it and quickly falls asleep. And then Aeneas passes this way that offers no opportunity for return. There's no turning back now. Line 576. Before the gates, the cries of babes newborn, whom fate had from their tender mothers torn, assaults his ears. Then those whom form of laws condemn to die when traitors judge their cause. Nor want they lots, nor judges to review the wrongful sentence and award anew. Minos, the strict inquisitor, appears, and lives and crimes with his assessors hears. Round in his urn the blended balls he rolls, absolves the just, and dooms the guilty souls. The next in place and punishment are they who prodigally throw their souls away. Fools who were pining at their wretched state, and loathing anxious life, suborned their fate. With late repentance now they would retrieve the bodies they forsook, and wish to live. Their pains and poverty desire to bear, to view the light of heaven and breathe the vital air. But fate forbids, the Stygian floods oppose, and with 9 circling streams the captive souls enclose. Not far from thence the mournful fields appear, so called from lovers that inhabit there. The souls whom that unhappy flame invades, in secret solitude and myrtle shades, make endless moans, and pining with desire lament too late their unextinguished fire. Here Procris, Eriphyle here he found, bearing her breast, yet bleeding with the wound made by her son. He saw Pasiphae there, with Phaedra's ghost, a foul incestuous pair. There Laodamia with Evadne moves, unhappy both, but loyal in their loves. Zenus, a woman once, and once a man, but ending in the sex she first began. Not far from these, Phoenician Dido stood, fresh from her wound, her bosom bathed in blood, whom when the Trojan hero hardly knew, obscure in shades and with a doubtful view, doubtful as he who sees through dusky night, or thinks he sees the moon's uncertain light, with tears he first approached the sullen shade, and as his love inspired him, thus he said, "Unhappy queen, then is the common breath of rumor true, in your reported death, and I, alas, the cause? By heaven, I vow, and all the powers that rule the realms below, unwilling I forsook your friendly state, commanded by the gods and forced by fate. Those gods, that fate whose unresisted might have sent me to these regions void of light, through the vast empire of eternal night. Nor dared I to presume that, pressed with grief, my flight should urge you to this dire relief. Stay your steps, and listen to my vows. 'Tis the last interview that fate allows." In vain he thus attempts her mind to move, with tears and prayers and late repenting love. Disdainfully she looked, then turning round, but fixed her eyes unmoved upon the ground, and what he says and swears regards no more than the deaf rocks when the loud billows roar, but whirled away to shun his hateful sight, hid in the forest in the shades of night. Then sought Zacchaeus through the shady grove, who answered all her cares and equaled all her love. Some pious tears the pitying hero paid, and followed with his eyes the flitting shade. Then took the forward way, by fate ordained, and with his guide the farther fields attained, where, severed from the rest, the warrior souls remained. Tydeus he met, with Meleager's race, the pride of armies and the soldier's grace, and pale Adrastus with his ghastly face. Of Trojan chiefs he viewed a numerous train, all much lamented, all in battle slain. Glaucus and Medon, high above the rest, Antenor's son, and Ceres' sacred priest, and proud Idaeus, Priam's charioteer, who shakes his empty reins and aims his airy spear. The gladsome ghosts and circling troops attend, and with unwearied eyes behold their friend, delight to hover near, and long to know what business brought him to the realms below. But Argive chiefs and Agamemnon's train, when his refulgent arms flashed through the shady plain, fled from his well-known face with wonted fear, as when his thundering sword and pointed spear drove headlong to their ships and gleaned the routed rear. They raised a feeble cry with trembling notes, but the weak voice deceived their gasping throats. Okay, so Aeneas has gotten across the river Styx, and he first meets a few groups of people, first babies who were lost early in life, and he hears those who were condemned to die wrongly, and he hears those groaning and moaning who have killed themselves. And then he gets to the mournful fields, and this is full of references to those who have sinned or died because of love. So to name just a few, Procris is one who jealously spied on her husband at one point, and then tries to come out while he's on a hunt after spying on him, and he accidentally shoots her with an arrow. You have Eriphyle, who persuades her husband to go off to war, and then she's killed by her son. You have Pasiphae, who was the mother of the Minotaur and had love for this bull of heaven. You have others mentioned, and then you have Zenus, who I think warrants some explanation. She was a woman, and then Neptune transformed her into a man before she became a woman again. And so all of these had a lot of hardships in love, and that's why they are here in the mournful fields. And then Dido shows up, and Aeneas barely recognizes her, as if line 614, it were dark out and you can't really tell by the moon's light what you're looking at. But he recognizes her and says, "Oh my goodness, it can't be true. It can't be true. How are you here? I never thought this would happen. I was called by fate and the gods, and I never meant for this to happen. Please don't go," because she starts to drift away. And she's now, interestingly, unmoved. And she stops listening like a deaf rock, and she makes her way back to her first husband, Sychaeus. And Aeneas is truly kind of broken up about this. I mean, he's really crying. Of course, it doesn't take him long to move on when fate calls him forward, but he does feel bad about seeing Dido there. And so then he meets all of these famous warriors, Titius and Meleager and Adrastus, and all of these have stories with them. And he sees all of his Trojan buddies, and they're all asking him what he's doing there, and they kind of talk for a long time. It's so good to see each other. And the only people who are not happy to see Aeneas are all of the dead Greeks, the Argive soldiers, Agamemnon's train there, and they run away from him as if he were chasing them with a spear back to their ships. And that's going to finish off the section.